You're listening to the CBA Podcast. CBA Podcast is brought to you by Chapman Basketball Academy. Your hosts are Terry Massey, Max Johansson, and Joe Chapman. All right, good morning, everybody. I got a great guest today. Before we get into it, season's over. Who you expected to win? Did they win?
Yeah, on the boys' side, I expected Marquette to win just because of the sectional they were in. To get to that point.
I wonder how they picked Marquette out of those four. Like if you're Homestead or anyone else.
Yeah, Celtics was there, Homestead. You had Arrowhead, De Pere,
Germantown,
Oshkosh North.
Yeah, why
all on one side. Marquette, they made it to the sectional finals last year, lost to De Pere, and they were returning so many seniors. So, we kind of knew they'd have a chance if they were allowed to play their game and kind of flourish together. A lot of those guys play year-round together, so they know each other's game, and they're all really good friends. So once they hit their stride, they lost a couple games in Concordia this year, and we were at some of those games, and we were like, they just need to figure out what it's worth to them to play as a team, or is it about individual? And once that started clicking for them, it was going to be hard to beat them because they are the definition of how you play basketball today. They shoot 50, 60 threes.
When Nolan did that dunk over their big guy, I knew that they're going to probably win this game.
Yeah. And, that was just a special moment. I was there. I was able to watch the game and just sitting there and to see it kind of go full circle to see Marquette win it all. Had a chance to see your parents was there.
Oh, yeah. Papa Mike Novak. Grandma Jean,
your sister was there too.
Nephews.
All your nephews. So the boys were there. Your brother was there.
Yeah.
So it's just fun just to see. And we were probably at 8 to 10 Marquette games and see the Big Mike. He's always there.
Crowd control. Someone's got to control the people.
Mike's like, I'm here to just help people out. I'm like, come on, Coach Mike, you're not doing anything. You're watching the game. He's just sitting there watching the game too. So it's just funny.
His way to the gym. He finds a good game. If you would see my text messages from Papa Mike, it's like, here's the tournament schedule. Here's the following weekend schedule. Here's what I think is going to happen.
Right.
I'm like, Dad, I don't honestly know.
Yeah.
Half of these teams, I don't know one player on any of these teams. You didn't go there.
Right.
You didn't coach there.
Right.
He loves it.
He just loves it. Loves it.
So
and I seen him walking out of the gym, with your mom. I stopped to talk to her, and they walked out, holding hands, and it's just like, this is just a cool love story that they have. I'm like, where are you guys going? They heading over to State Street, after the game to get an Uber. So it was just pretty cool, just to see a basketball family, like that. So I think the playoffs was pretty cool. So it was kind of emotional to kind of see all those players.
A lot of Chapman guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of Chapman guys on that player. So
I even seen in the
fun to see,
like a sideline shot. There's a kid with a Chapman shirt on in the crowd. But you got to be pretty proud. I mean, as far as Chapman players, state title, a lot of first conference, a lot of all-state players.
Yep.
I mean, you got to be pretty proud of everybody.
Yeah, some Mr. Basketball nominees. I mean, I shared a story about Nolan, who we seen in 8th and 9th grade. No one knew him. He was on nobody's radar. He came in and he actually didn't make our first team doing tryouts. He couldn't make it through the bear crawls. He was throwing up. It was like, I don't know who this kid is. So just to see how he took off, every year, he eventually made that team and he just got better and better. And we pushed him to be better, individually, because he was so a freak of nature getting downhill, so it's like, well, you can't really guard him. So we just expanded his game, made him realize what he needs to do to get better. And he was a sponge. And what made me the most proud about him was we were playing a game in a live period where it was a lot of coaches there. And we're playing swing, and the swing coaches know him pretty well. And he's just dominating this whole live period. We're in Kentucky last year, and he's dominating. We get to this game. They played him in the paint. They didn't allow him to shoot. They wanted him to shoot. They didn't want him to go. And he went 1 for 11 from 3. We ended up winning by 2. but he was so down on himself, from going 1 from 11 from 3. Go full circle. We talk about it over that weekend. We watched the film of what he needed to correct. He put some time into it. The next live period, he just dominated even more with his shot and his playmaking and getting downhill. But it showed in that finals.
Yeah.
They tried to do the same thing.
It's crazy.
Bennett tried to guard him in the paint. So the first couple, he kind of jabbed and said, I'm letting this thing fly. And he made his first couple threes. Now you got to press up on him. Now it's you're in a world of hurt. That's why that dude got dunked on, because they tried to press him, and you can't do that, So
it's the beautiful part about basketball, though,
it
isn't
is
it? Having a guy.
Yes,
and it's
that's
not
what I was
just
going to say.
It's skill set, and it's
Yes.
the way the game is played now, too. And,
Yep.
watching that state championship game, too, like you're saying, if you can make shots as a guy, as
Yes.
an individual player,
Yep.
the way you're guarded is one thing.
Yes.
If you can't, it's another. And I think
Yep.
that's just the case for even just team basketball, where
Yep,
the
yep.
NBA is currently at. So
Yep.
you think about, like you're saying, how the game is played now, 3-point shooting and the heavy movement towards that. But the truth is, yes, a lot of guys and teams are shooting those shots.
Yep.
But obviously, to me, the magic is really in, where is your counter?
Yep.
You're talking, if it's Nolan Minnesali, if it's
Yep.
Marquette High, if it's the Golden State Warriors, like, what is your counter?
Mm-hmm.
And like thinking about those live periods for Nolan,
Mhm.
right? It's like, what happened? He got tested.
Yeah.
He couldn't make shots for a minute.
Yep.
He had to go back to the drawing board and figure out, like, what is my counter?
Correct.
I got to become a shooter and
Yep.
still put it on the ground.
Right.
And so it's just amazing to see, like, the great players.
Yep.
They have a skill
Yep.
and a counter. The great teams, if you look at the Golden State Warriors in all the years that they won their championships, that everybody says 3-point shooting, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. But it really was the fact that they had the ultimate counter, and that they were one of the teams that they made more 2-point baskets
Yep.
than or had the best balance in the NBA of any team. And people go, "Oh, we're a 3-point shooting team." No, they had one of the best counters. They scored a ton of points in the paint. They were a great mid-range team with
Yep.
guys like Iguodala. And so
Yep.
And I would even
It's-
lean like it's more of the threat of shooting like that
Yeah.
to create all that space. Like, but if Nolan doesn't take those 11 shots, I think he's doing like his team a disservice. Like,
Oh,
even
right.
he makes 1 out of 5.
Right.
At least maybe the next one that guy takes a half a step up now,
Right.
and it's a thought of it. Like he's shooting these. So I
Yeah,
have to
and on his
close on a
recruiting
little bit.
battle, that's what they were talking about. Like, how much is he willing to take that shot? It looks good. It's not going left and right. It looks square on. How much is he comfortable shooting that? And there was so many questions that they were just asking me, a lot of the college coaches, because he was on the verge of, like, he can be his trajectory in 3-4 years from now. I was telling Travis
Absolutely.
that I don't know where he
Absolutely.
can be in 3-4 years. He's so gifted in a lot of different ways that if he
Yes.
continued to put it all together and trust his shot, because he's gotten everything else, he's going to get stronger and bigger. That's what college does.
His vision is unreal.
Yeah, his vision is very great. We made him a good passer. That's something he wasn't when he got here. He was just downhill player. So we wanted to make sure that, get a foot in the paint and start looking for other players. That's what happened in that finals game. They didn't make shots early. It was a close game early, but they were taking those shots. Arrowhead had the big guy right in the middle. So
It was like a 2 to 4 game for
Yeah.
like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
or
it was.
6 minutes.
Mhm.
and those same shots they started making, because they took them early. So it was just exciting to see. And that leads us to Steve here.
Yeah. So you've heard a little bit from our guest, Brown Deer High School alum, played Marquette Final Four freshman year, 11 years with the NBA, and current Bucks analysis, Steve Novak. Welcome.
Great to be here. Great to be on. In good company, of course.
Me and Steve came in together. Steve actually, was one of my motivations because he got to campus probably 2-3 months probably ahead of me because he was closer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he got a chance to.
Oh, you want to come and live with Scott Holtzapfel earlier with me? I was getting my butt kicked doing wall sits at 6 a.m. Joe is at graduation parties. Oh, now he misses it.
But most college kids don't do that. We wait till, first we don't know we could do that. But secondly, even if we knew, we probably wouldn't do it. He wanted to to go get his butt kicked. He wanted to get integrated with the team. He was one of those guys that always wanted to work, even if we had 4 or 5 hour practices, which we did a lot.
Oh yeah, we did.
He would come back.
It's not a real thing.
So did you left after first semester of high school?
No, I finished my full senior year, but I literally remember, like Joe was saying, I remember having to leave a graduation party early. You know, it's that time of year. You graduated, you're at the parties, everybody's getting together, you're having fun. It's done with high school.
Yeah.
And I literally remember being like, I got to go home and go to bed because I had to go lift at 6 a.m. We're talking like school just ended, right? On Friday. And it was like the weekend. And it was like, I gotta go lift at 6 a.m. at Marquette. Like I've never really, but it was Coach Crean was like, come on, let's get to it.
Right.
And like Joe was saying, I lived right here in Brown Deer. So I was, 15 minutes down the road. I got to the lift. I don't know how to park on the streets yet with meter parking. I get there like 6 minutes late.
Oh no.
And Joe already knows. And Scott Holsopple, our strength coach, looked at me. I'm talking about this is my walking in
Meet you outside.
He said, on the wall. I said, what? Well, I don't even know what that means. 6 minutes late, 6-minute wall sit, and I'm sitting there. My legs are shaking. Before we
Did we have the bags yet? You remember the bags?
No bags yet. I was still like 199 pounds. They didn't bring out the sandbags to put on your legs yet. I was never late again. It was like, if you're going to come late, you're going to really regret it. Your whole workout's going to be shot.
And Steve used to mention how he used to sleep. So we were in the old gym at the time, Marquette, and after those workouts, he used to sleep in our office space, in the gym space, in the locker room. Just take a nap for a couple hours.
Because those workouts, I'm telling you, were 6 a.m. and it was when you do an individual lift.
Yeah.
And you haven't worked like that before, and you're lifting to failure. You know, it's like bench press to failure with whatever weight. You're doing neck resistance to failure, to the point where everything is to failure. Yeah. And I'm coming out of high school. I just got done. Thought I was working hard at Brown Deer. I would be so exhausted and maxed out. I couldn't get my hands on the steering wheel. It sounds like something you make up, but I really couldn't drive home. I'd have crashed into the wall. So I would go, like Joe was saying, there were couches in our locker room, and I would code in, and I would lay on the couch thinking like my feeling in my arms are going to come back, and I would just fall asleep. It would only be like 8 a.m.
Right.
And I remember having the most vivid, wild dreams I've ever had in my life. I don't know what the science is there, but if you max out a lift at 6 a.m. and you take a nap at 8, I saw unicorns and fairies. And I wake up like, and I would drive home Brown Deer like, Mom.
What about those manual resistance neck workouts? So we have workouts sometimes where
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Me either. So it required no weights. So those days, you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be an easy day. It's no weights. No weights. You just, manual resistance day. They put your arms to the side and they try to, come up with it. Neck resistance. And after my freshman year, I realized that those days are the ones you don't want the most.
Yeah. Give us the weights back.
Because everyone's is to failure. So how many, someone's on your neck, you're trying to come up.
It's what it sounds like. Someone's literally, like Joe would be my partner. I would be laying on the bench, and he would be pushing with his palm in my forehead.
And how many of these lifts do you think they do? They do 0 of these lifts today, right?
Oh, God, no. Everything we did for those 4 years, I don't think anyone does now.
Some of the stuff we were doing,
it's illegal.
It would get phased out while we were still in school. The Blue Mile?
Oh, man.
You'd be like, what happened to the Blue Mile? They're like,
I don't think that was legal.
Started to do it, and they had back issues.
Right.
They're like, we had back issues too.
Some of us can't walk now because of that. We had farmers walk,
the Superman bag, pulling a 100-pound punching bag down a mile-long hallway.
Yeah, mile-long hallway. You got a punching bag on your back, and you got to go as fast as you can. Then you got a farmer's walk with 2 gasoline things, 100-pound tanks in your hands. You got that part of your hands are just like can't move.
What Joe was describing was called the finisher. It was the blue. It was after you had already done all the resistance, the full arms, legs, whatever.
Oh, I'm telling you.
And now what?
Right. It's over.
No. About to go get started.
And don't forget the play push to finish it, too. A mile play push, 45, 50, you're just down.
What about after they recarpeted the area where we were doing the play? Because it was like real low and smooth. You could push it real easy. Yeah. And then they came in one summer and recarpeted.
Couldn't get down.
It was like a 400-pound play push.
You wonder why Joe's pushing these kids in the boot camps. I'm going to get
you. Oh, yeah. That's my payback.
Yeah.
So, the first year I got to tell this story before we get deeper into Steve, but our very first individual we had, me and Steve, and it was two other freshmen, Kayron Bradley and Andy Freund.
Yeah, because Chris Grimm wasn't there yet.
No, he wasn't there yet. Yeah. He got lucky. It's in the old gym. The old gym it's in June. So the old gym is probably around 105 degrees.
No circulation.
No circulations, no fans. It's a death trap in there. And they know it. So they put 45 minutes, individuals with 45 minutes at the time. And you can look, it's a stairwell in the old gym that you can look up and see everyone's workout. And you can see if Coach Green's there and see if the
We'd be downstairs. We would just go up it and we'd peek up and we'd look.
Say, which coaches are here today? Like,
what are they doing?
What we got? Yeah. And to be honest, the workouts were never the same. It'll be 4 forwards together, then it'd be freshmen together, then it'd be all the guards. So you're like, okay, I think I know what we're doing today. Then you go up there, the workout's totally different. 45-minute workout. Their goal is to not let you get through that 45 minutes.
Somebody's going to quit.
So they want you to quit.
Somebody needs to drop out.
So we doing all these random moves, dribble moves from half court against the coach. And then you lay the ball up, and then the coaches got a pad, and you got to dribble move past them back to half court.
It's like gladiators. No, really. Like Joe's saying, it's gladiators to finish. Someone just beating you with the pad. Then you get the rebound, and they beat you with the pad back to half court.
Then your turn is up again. You're like, as soon as you hit half court, it's your turn again.
Yep.
And you sitting there like, man, I'm supposed to do this for 45 minutes. It's only 4 of us. Then we got one-on-one full court. Then we got 2 dribbles to, finish from half court. So they just making these drills. And the whole time it's like lieutenants or captains, you just hear them barking at you. At this point, you don't even know what they're saying, but you just hear them barking.
Trying to stay alive. Yeah. You're like, I hear the tone, but I can't breathe. I can't see straight. And I'm back up next.
They telling you you're not nothing. I don't know why we recruited you. Like, why are you here? But you're hearing this, but you trying to like F them, but you're trying to get through the drill too.
Right.
So it's like a break-in moment. They trying to break you to be a part of the group. So we get to about 33, 34 minutes. Kayron Bradley, one of our good friends, played with us. Anytime he gets tired, he get donut lips. Like it gets real donutted. So we look at
a few powdered donuts before they'd be like, "Shut up, man! Shut up!" He's dying in the corner.
It starts on his side, and then it just starts to fill up. So I see him. I'm like, "Oh, he's about to go down." So he went down, and we had a guy, Andy Freund.
And by go down, what Joe means is, like, the psychology of it is when we first get there, like, you don't know they're trying to kill you or make you quit. So you're just going hard, and then all of a sudden you're like, man,
7 minutes in.
Yeah, you
can't breathe.
You can't breathe. And eventually but then you start to realize after a few workouts, like, oh, we're going to go until someone goes down. So it's sort of a psychological thing where you start to think, like, as it starts to get tough, you're like,
hey, who's going to go?
Am I go down? Like, should I go down? Like, who should go down let's get this over with. Like, somebody needs to fall out.
Yeah, right.
So you just sort of like act like they hit you with the pad wrong and you tweak your ankle, or you act like, oh, I can't breathe for a minute. Like, I need to sit out. I got to get some water. You have a panic attack. Something has to happen.
Something has to happen for the group to be done.
So Kayron falls out.
Yeah, he falls out. He had cramps. Cramps. He always had cramps. He was just a hamstring. He's a full of ball muscle.
Yeah, perfect. All right, he's out, so I don't have to fall out.
So we're like, yeah. We got through it so far.
Bring it in, fellas. We're done.
Right.
No, keep going. Like,
the clock's not done. It's just
keep
like,
going.
damn. So Andy Freund was the next one to go out. He sweats a lot, so he's just fatigued at this point.
And he goes 1,000%. Like, he doesn't know how to.
Yeah.
Now there's only 3 of us, now 4. He doesn't know how to just sort of space it a little more, preserve it. He was going to run through whatever wall And so the problem with Andy Freund was we had to like reassure him, don't worry, you'll pass out before you die.
Right.
So he was like, I think he kind of was of the mindset like, okay, good.
Yeah.
We were like, yeah, good because you won't die, but bad because you need to slow down.
Right.
He was like, I'm trying to pass out quick.
Right.
I'm trying to get this over with. We're like, okay, Andy, but then there's only going to be two of us, and that's not being a good teammate.
Right.
Like, kick the ball and then go get it.
Go get it.
Tie your shoe. Like, take a break.
Oh,
you know what I'm
man.
saying? Like, just
And that's what happened. Like, he passed out on the court.
Yeah.
So everyone rushing over there trying to
remember
fan him. They trying to fan him off. Like, God damn, Andy, like, get some water.
It was like his was like a phantom gunshot. It was under the rim, you know, like Joe was describing. When you go enough times, dribble move, hit,
Yeah.
and the pacing starts to get to the point you're like,
Oh, boy.
I don't think I can. I think I'm done. I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
Andy, boom, he goes up, he gets hit, boom, he got a solid hit from like Coach Dwayne Stevens.
Coach Stevens.
And he just got hit, went down, and we both knew.
It was
Like he wasn't even gonna get up. That was it. Just
yeah.
he was out.
And he was one of those guys that made like phantom noises, like He's one of those guys.
Yes.
He was out. I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
You know, so
He's dead.
yeah. So basically, they kind of just rolled him to the side, like whatever, fan him off condo, like give him our trainer, like give him some water, like get him out.
Right.
It's about 15 minutes still left.
This is the point of the story.
This is the point of the story.
This is the best. I remember.
So, Steve's going one way, I'm going the other way. And they just killing us at this point. It's about who falls out. He's got layups going this way. I got layups. Got to beat the cone. Got to beat the coach. Boom, we looking at each other.
We can't go for 15 straight minutes.
Just two of us.
Full. I mean, I think they might have had us going like, let's go full court now.
It was full court. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were going this way. I was going the other way.
There is
I was
no,
like,
it's constant. You can't stop. We're already maxed. These dudes are already, one has donut mouth, one got shot. And me and Joe, go ahead. Like you said,
Yeah.
I remember this.
And they're screaming stuff at us. Oh, you're from Brown Deer. You're from Chicago. You guys are not tough enough. We're like, trying to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm starting looking at Steve. He's going this way. I'm going the other. I'm starting to look at him like, all right, come on. We got to do this. So,
and we both know what the look means. Like, hey, we're looking like, hey, I'm from Brown Deer. I'm not falling out. He's looking like, I'm from Chi-Town.
yeah, like we're not doing this.
I'm not falling. But then we're both, the look starts to change. Like, hey, man, like, what you
want to do here?
Into each other? Like,
how do you want to end this here? Like wrestling, like how do you want to end this? Like, what's our end plan?
Yes.
So we both end up falling at the same time.
I swear.
He's going one way, I'm going the other way. We just drop. So it's probably like 7 minutes left on the clock. For those 7 minutes, they just, you guys not tough enough, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there like,
thank God. Say whatever
you want to say.
Yeah.
As soon as the timer went off, great job, guys. You just had the best workout ever. You're like, I'm going to do this for 4 years. You know, it was just unbelievable. The length that they wanted you to come in as the culture. They already tried to build a culture. We were just like the missing pieces that was left of a Final Four team that we'll dive into. But that was the first day I was like, did I really prepare myself enough for what was coming for 4 years? No.
There was
no way.
Unless you had done Navy SEAL. People say like, oh, well, don't compare the military to. Let me tell you something. I'm not talking about war versus basketball. I'm talking about training.
Right.
It was not that different.
No, we'll run outside, in the rain. Until someone passes out, we'll run around.
We're doing burpees in the mud. In the rain until someone quits. And then everyone starts looking like,
it's going to be the one.
Who's going to be the one?
Yeah.
Did you guys have a fall guy? Did you have a guy?
It was always a fall guy.
Oh, yeah. You had to have a fall guy.
It was a different guy each time?
Yeah. It can't be the same guy. Yeah, it can't be the same guy.
No, they leave.
Yeah.
They're just all
you can't do that.
But as soon as somebody quits, then it would turn into, you'd be like, oh, good, man, we can be done. And then it would turn into, if someone quit, they're like, I'm out, or they're like, I leave. Then it was like no one stops until they come back.
Right.
And then you weren't sure if you were ever going to stop. You're like, come back. He might have just left time. He might have quit the team.
he ran away from this.
Yeah, you were like, we might be doing burpees till February.
Yeah, our 4 years, we probably had 12 players, and probably like 5 to 6 coaches who left. I mean, it's a gauntlet.
Is that pretty much the culture of all the big colleges, or is that just a Crean thing?
No, I think it was a culture of that time.
Yeah,
of the bigger schools. That's just the way they were brought up, the coaching staff, and it paid off. I mean, we're not saying anything that we regret. I mean, if you asked me to do it again, I probably couldn't. But
no, there's
more hot yoga for that,
right? But that time, that's what they were doing. I mean, Coach Crean was in his mid-30s. I mean, this is where he came from, right. Michigan State.
Yeah,
I mean, this was the culture
of Tom Izzo and football at basketball practice type war drills and physicality. And like Joe was saying, it was more of a psychological development to be able to get you to believe that you could overcome anything. When you just watch guys fall out in workouts, I think like the point was you have to experience that you didn't or that you made it all the way through because I think you're training, warriors. You're trying to be the toughest basketball team out there. So to Joe's point, like we joke about it and talk about it like we were abused.
Right.
Because we were for sure to a certain degree. But at the same time, I think like it makes you so grateful that you realize you can never push yourself to that point.
No.
You have to have somebody who's a leader and, has the vision that we're going to turn you into this kid from Brown Deer who doesn't really like that much contact into like you got to be able to withstand these kind of workouts and you got to find a way to fight through because you have to be able to rebound the ball and you have to be able to handle the ball and you got to be able to handle pressure and you got to be able to a high enough degree that you can be great at what your skill set is. It's like that's
before because I want to get to how you start, but you just said something about Coach Crean that is so true that he gets the best out of you that you don't know that's in you. The first Big East game that we had, the night before or 2 days prior, we had practice to prepare for UConn.
The day before.
We're playing UConn. They're number 2 in the country. It's our first Big East game.
The inaugural Big East game. Marquette, do they belong? Some schools came over from Conference USA.
It was the first game.
Play number 2 UConn.
Let's see who the Conference USA. Oh, my God. They were loaded.
Was Okafor on that team?
No. The other big one, Josh Boone.
They had like
Villanueva.
No
Villanueva. Who was the point guard who stole the laptop?
Yeah, light skinned. Marcus. Something.
He had stole the laptop. He was All-American. It was his first game back.
Yeah,
he had just come off a suspension from stealing laptops. If there was NIL, there wouldn't have been a problem.
Right. And we have practice, and we're preparing it. And coaches just going at Steve. Now, just like now, in practices, people are, able to watch. They come in and watch practice. We probably had like 40, 50 there just to watch our practice to prepare for UConn. And he's just going at Steve. He's going at all of us. We kind of expect it, but he's really going at Steve today. He's going at him about he's not tough enough. We got Josh Boone tomorrow. Like, who are you going to guard? You're not rebounding enough. Like, he had to end a drill by dunking. So we sit there. Steve's got a dunk. It's like, oh, we're going to have a terrible day. He's just ready wanting to kick Steve out of practice. Meanwhile, this is a lot of people watching like, oh, my God, what are they doing? Like they play the next day.
They have a game tomorrow. Like he's going to kill these guys.
But that's the psychology that Coach Crean plays on us. Like he knows that stuff. And he knew what we needed to do to be prepared to play in that league. And the next day it's in history. I mean, we beat the number 2 team. Steve, you had 40 or 42 and 16.
41 and 16. Yeah. 16 rebounds.
16 rebounds. And that was just like, and UConn didn't know what to do. Now, this is an era where Steve was kind of a unicorn. So he's coming off triple screens, down screens, and Josh Boone and Hilton Armstrong are trying to guard him off all these screens in transition at ghost screens. And Steve was doing things that you see everybody kind of want to model now. It just wasn't normal to do. So when you see a 2-man game where it's Dominic James and Steve Novak on the empty side, well, what are you supposed to do there? You can't hedge because he's going to go screen to the corner. So that game kind of made us realize, like, okay, we get what coach is doing. We realize it, and it paid off dividends for us. But I want to dive into how you started playing. Who was your motivation? Obviously, your dad was a coach at Brown Deer.
Yeah.
Your sister played basketball, and Andrea played D2 ball, Michigan Tech.
Yep, Michigan Tech.
And your brother played D2 ball too, right?
Yep.
It's a basketball family. So let's talk about how you grew up and what was your influences and how that came out to be.
For me, like you just described, like I was so blessed to grow up in what I would just call a basketball family. I think a lot of people listening I think they would consider themselves coming from basketball families. And I think like when I say that, it was essentially like when I was born, there was a basketball in my crib. There was a basketball hoop in the basement. We had a basketball hoop out in the driveway. And, my pops was a high school coach. So the thing that I think, when I think back to like, how was I raised? What were my basketball influences? What impacted what basketball, really became and still is in my life? How did that come to be, to your point, to your question? It's my dad. We joke about Papa Mike, at the games. It was the fact that was his life. He was a coach. He was a teacher. He was in the schools. Like I had a key to the gym. I hung out with my dad. I would go from kindergarten. My mom would pick me up, drop me off over at my dad's high school practices. And that was the environment that I grew up in, and I think, so to me, when I think back to like, what is the most shaping, most impactful piece of the way I grew up, it was the fact that my dad was always in an environment that included the gym. And so for me to be around the gym, in the gym, sometimes I was shooting, sometimes I wasn't, sometimes I was just hanging out. But I think that like in my opinion, like equally impactful just to have been in an environment that I was safe and healthy and having a good time and with my dad. Well, it was I associated the school system with my dad, the school buildings, the gym with my dad. And so I loved being there in those places with him. And so I think that's the one thing I'm so grateful for, is just to grow up in that environment. That's how I learned to love basketball, was asking my dad for 50 cents to go to the vending machine to get some licorice. And I would open it up, put it on the gym floor while his team was practicing and eat the licorice off the floor. And I think back, I was in the gym getting shots up and no, I was eating candy off the floor. But I think those associations, the love of the gym, the love of like had a basketball in my hand, is essentially, I think, was as important for me in my development as the actual skill work that Joe's describing, where we were getting killed, by Coach Crean at Marquette. That part matters. But I think I got to that point because my associations were so positive with hoops. My environment with my pops was hoops. And so, like you said, he brought along my older sister, my little brother, my younger sister. And so that was really my basketball upbringing. And I grew up in Brown Deer my whole life, and that was really where it took place. So that was the beginning of like the love of the game, and where it, I think, stems from, in the Novak family.
Yeah. Was there club basketball then?
There was, but, like very different. I think back to, if you fast forward, obviously kind of talking about like me as a youngster, no real club basketball. It was like I played at the YMCA, Schrader YMCA at Brown Deer, and then, ended up, playing a little other Pee Wee basketball. But like by the time when I played AAU, which would be considered, club AAU, I played for a team that was some guys from Green Bay, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Milwaukee area. We were just sort of, there were no cell phones. We were just, we would all talk to each other, figure out a way the parents would find a way to practice. And we had one team, no amazing clubs like Chapman to just go sign up for when I was playing. So it was literally a group of guys from Wisconsin getting together once a week and practicing at Sheboygan North or at Bayport or at Brown Deer and playing. And so, a very different environment at that time.
Was it just basketball too your whole life, or were you any other sports?
I was everything. It was like I specialized, I think, at a time when I was like, I made the decision, like, I love basketball. This is what I want to do. But really, like my dad, that being said, as a basketball coach, my dad coached baseball. He coached track and field. He coached football. He was, he was an athletic director, so he was involved in all the sports. So for me growing up, it was never, ever like, you play basketball, you're going to be this, or you're going to. I played volleyball. I ran track. I played full contact flag football at St. Bernadette's, ran track and field, played Little League, so I did everything really through, not all of those through 8th grade, but some of those all the way through 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so then in like 8th grade is really when I was like, I want to get a college scholarship for basketball. I want to specialize in hoops just because I was spending that amount of time, working on the side and doing my own stuff at that point. So that was kind of when I decided I wanted to do it. But I definitely think that playing other sports had a lot to do with, just my all-around development, and the fact that I was at an age where I had decided that was the one thing I wanted to do, which I think there's the struggle now. I see it, with, Joe's boys and my boys too, to just some of the scheduling to try to figure out how you can make it all work. But I think it's a beautiful thing to do more than one thing, for really, to me, as long as you can.
Yeah. Can you imagine trying to schedule stuff nowadays back then without cell phones? The way
Exactly.
your schedule is now,
Yeah.
without cell phones and
Right.
computers and stuff, I couldn't imagine.
No.
Yeah, it was a lot of caller IDs and
Right.
phone calls.
Right.
Hey, can you guys be in
Get
Sheboygan
together.
next Tuesday at 6? I'll call you back.
Yeah. So tell us about who did you model your game after at an early age, and who gave you the idea of I can be a stretch forward, and were you always the tallest growing up when you started playing?
Yeah, for me, the influences on my game were 100% my dad's high school players.
Hmm.
I just think back to like the guys that were my heroes. People say like, what NBA teams did you watch, and who are your NBA
Mm-hmm.
guys that you loved? Like, to be honest, growing up, I watched high school basketball,
Mm-hmm.
multiple times a week, and it was with my dad at practice. It was with him at games. I was his ball boy and his manager. And so for me, it was like the guys I loved were the shooters that played for my dad at Brown Deer High School. I'm a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. And whether you're a 6'5" guy or a 5'10" guy, like the guys I love were the guys getting buckets, making threes, and so the truth is, like, those were the guys that, I wouldn't even say like I modeled my game after, but those were the guys that their game spoke to me, that I was like, I love that about basketball. I love that, excites me. Seeing, like one of my dad's point guards come off and bang down a three, or, a swing and the guy hits a corner. Like the 3-point shot was always like so exciting. That's what I loved. And so I was always, like you asked, I was the tallest kid always growing up. I was like 6'5" in 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
I was as tall as I am now at like 6'9", 6'10" by my sophomore year, but I was always a tall kid. So people always did say like, you should post up more. Oh, you should be a big guy. And I get it, rightfully so, as far as what basketball is, was especially then.
Right.
But I think, to my dad's credit, and I'm not sure, I wasn't too stubborn a kid. I think I was going to probably get my way either way because I just loved shooting. But he at no point said like, I'm glad you like to shoot, but you need to go put your back to the basket. We got to throw it in and work on the drop step. Like, my dad was a big man when he played at Carroll College.
Mm-hmm.
So of course he had me doing the Mikan drill and doing drop step drills and doing little, Kareem half hooks and stuff like that, because that was what he loved. But but just from a skill set to develop those things. But I loved to shoot. And so he never said like, you shouldn't do that, or that's not good for you. And, to his credit, I think I would have played such a lesser role in my career, and I would have played so many fewer years if I end up being like a 215-pound, 6'10" guy that wasn't really a big to play at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were saying, Joe, the stuff we were doing against UConn, we're running bigs off screens and they're getting caught up in it.
Yep.
I was ahead of the curve as a big fella shooter because it was who I was from when I was very young. I just always loved letting it go and shooting it. And I think it 100% with the way the game changed, it put me at a huge advantage as far as like playing for as long and as successfully as I possibly could. And so obviously where the game is at now, seeing our guy, Sam Hauser just on Sunday against the Washington Wizards, guy goes for 30 points. He made 10 threes. All of his points God bless them. But it's like, am I jealous? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Am I envious? Like, yeah. But a lot of old school guys go like, oh man, I wish I get that money. And the money's kind of crazy. I'd like to have a little bit of that back too, as much as they're making. But I just want the volume.
Volume shooting.
I want the shots. He's getting up 10 makes
off the bench.
Off the bench. These guys, it's like,
it's amazing.
It's just, and obviously part of it makes me just so proud to feel like I was a trailblazer in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at like guys that are 6'9", 6'10", that shot it,
yep.
You know, like I was one of those guys that I think made it go, you go like, one, those guys can shoot it. And two, like it's really valuable if they can. It's a matchup problem. And so, you know, just seeing where the game is at now, it's exciting for a guy like me who always enjoyed playing that way.
When you said, who do you eliminate your game after or whatever, I think back early days, the NBA was popular, but it wasn't until Jordan came where everybody's like, all right, I want to be like that guy. And that's when I think you started, you know, associating yourself with certain players in the NBA is when Jordan came on the scene. Early 90s is when the NBA took off.
Yeah.
That's who I want to be like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think all of us as kids had those, you know, people we look towards and say, can I have a little fraction of their games inside of mine? You know, and I think that's important for all kids to have that, is to dream as big as you can. And whatever your skill set starts to be, start to perfect it. Because that's what I think, you know, you did, Steve, is you perfected your skill set like no other person that I've seen before. I mean, there would be times I come back from overseas and your season's over and we'd be in a gym for, you know, hour, 2 hours, just at the owl, just shooting, you know, and that's something that you've always done, you know. So talk about like the perfection of your craft and how much time it took, you know, it was still a taboo. I'm watching college basketball and Steve was in the 3-point contest and he's the biggest guy out there, you know? So, you know, everyone's like, oh, he's shooting 45, you know, 50% from three, but they wasn't saying it like he was about to win this competition. They were just saying it like he was that good in college from shooting. So when the competition started, you could just see how, boom, one shot, next shot, the crowd just started getting bigger and standing up because it was like he was making 10, 11, 12 in a row, you know, but that was something you were doing in college. You know, you were perfecting how to shoot off the rack. You were perfecting how to shoot off the dribble where it wasn't normal back then to take a shot off the dribble, you know. So let's talk about how much time you started to perfect knowing that this is what I was going to be.
Yeah, you know, and the way you're describing it is just so true. Like, it was just something I truly had a passion for. Like, I realized, I think at a young enough age, one, I think for me to be really successful playing the sport of basketball, like shooting was where I was going to have my most success. I was never like the fastest kid. I was athletic enough. Mm-hmm. But I think the combination of realizing like there's more athletic guys out there that I'm facing and the fact that like I just have a passion for shooting.
Yep.
It made me, I would say, like in 8th grade. And like I had said, that was kind of when I decided to specialize in basketball and say, I'm going to commit more time. Like I want to. This is what I want to spend time doing. I love it. I want to shoot more. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to play one-on-one with my friends more. I want to be able to play more summer hoops. I want to play more winter hoops. Like this is what I want at that point. And it really was like in 8th grade, you start to play in some of the tournaments. You start to see how many teams and you start to see there's some really good other players out there.
Yeah.
And so I set the goal for myself in 8th grade that every single day after school, I was going to come home, get my homework done, get something to eat, and I was going to make 300 shots every day after school. And so it was like, what's the number, I said, that all these kids in New York and all these kids in Florida and all these kids in Texas, what's the number that they're not going to be doing? Because I was like, at that point, I had the mindset, like, what do I need to do to truly be as good as I want to be, a varsity player, a D1 scholarship? And I had dreams to play in the NBA. And I thought it was make 300. I thought that was a number. I'm like, other kids are not going to be willing to do that. And so I set that goal to make 300 shots every single day after school. People said like, oh, do you mean you shot 300 shots or you made 300? And for me, it was like, I thought any kid in New York City on the playground, and they were always the kids in my mind because I knew that culture of basketball and how many people were playing. I was like, I got to be better than these guys in New York. And so to me, I was like, anybody can go miss 300 on the playground. And they won't be better than me. But if I'm making 300, I'm like, that takes time. And so I was I had a half court in my backyard or obviously my pops had keys to the gym, but it was usually in the backyard. I would shoot, I'd go get my rebound, I'd dribble it back out, I'd shoot again, and I counted everything but layups. It was mid-range, it was three-pointers, and obviously that's what I love to shoot. But that was the first piece for me that I think it was like, I showed myself, I think, the commitment I had, the passion I had, and also just like it was the first like real goal that I had for myself to try to, I think, separate myself from what I, in my head, looked at as every other basketball player my age in the world.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the thing I'm going to do. And it was just an early goal for me in 8th grade to say, like, I need to get these reps. And I would say, like, the 300 shots, I don't even know that, like, that number is something that I would say, like, 300 is so important. That's what you should do if you want to be great.
Right.
I think, was I shooting game speed the whole time? Like, not really. Mm-hmm. But I would, and so I think from that standpoint, maybe 100 would have been a better number. But I do think the time that I spent making the 300, it took me 2.5 hours to do that every day. And I look back and I think about like the aha moments, the epiphanies that I had during those 2.5, which I thought it was like good for my mind. I was thinking about the other players. I was thinking about who I wanted to be. I was dreaming about the things I wanted to accomplish. It was like I was reinforcing over those 2 hours every day, like how important it was to me. And I was doing it again the next day. And it was, I had music on, and it was just so, it was very therapeutic, I think, and healthy when I think back. And so I do think that like spending that amount of time doing something too, you teach yourself a lot of things that someone else can't teach you. Like when you become the master of your craft, you become your best teacher. And so like my pops was my coach and my teacher at that time. But when I was spending 2 hours every single day shooting, like no one could tell me more about my shot than me. And so I started to realize like, hold on, if I hold my foul, just simple stuff that you hear, but unless you really know and experience it, you don't. If I hold my follow through, like, man, I'm really more consistent with my shot. Like, man, if I have my elbow under like this, it really goes where I want it to go more effortlessly. If I just turn my body just a little bit this way on my shot, it's amazing how much more fluid my shot can be and consistent and repeatable. And that's stuff you just don't realize unless you spend like hours and hours and hours on your own. Yeah, I can tell you as a young kid at basketball camp, hey, turn your body, hey, follow through, hey, keep your elbow under. Okay, great, thanks, Coach Novak. But I think putting it into effect and making it make you make shots in the game, that comes from, hey, you got to put the time in it. So like that was my passion, and it really still is. Working camps, so many camps with you, and coaching my son right now, and hosting a shooting competition across the state of Wisconsin. Like, it's the one thing that like no one can tell me I'm not an expert. Because listen, I'll tell you I'm an expert about a lot of things. We can talk politics and religion and science and art, and I'll tell you I'm an expert. But the truth is, like, that's the avenue that I'm an expert. And it's not because I say I am, it's because I've spent the time, whatever the Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, who knows? I don't know how many hours and reps I've had or taken, but I know for a fact that it's like the path that I've taken. I love to be able to talk to kids and talk to groups and say, this is what it worked for me. My point is, it's a version that is absolutely proven to be successful. Yours won't be the same, but I want to share my story and the way I worked and the things that I learned, because I think that they can impact you in a really positive way so that you can find your version and your way and all those things. And so I think for me, basketball and specifically shooting has been that. And I think it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And you had that in college as well, where, after our grueling practices, you still got up shots. You still were able to find ways to get better on your own because it was something that was in you already before you got to college. So that discipline and structure that most of us learn in college, you were fortunate to already have that. And I take myself, for instance, I shot 50% from three in high school, so I knew I can shoot the ball, and then you meet somebody else who's 6'9" and who's a better shooter, and you're like, that's different, and you realize that at an early age where, okay, how do you be successful around other successful people? How do you that's what makes special teams, meeting a person like a D Wade, you're like, oh, that dude's different. Like, I've seen a lot of 6'4", 6'5" guys. I ain't never seen nobody like that, and you kind of see it early. Like, people are just different, and to embrace your different is sometimes a taboo, because in college you're like, yeah, college's over. I'm going to put the gun up and I'm going to shoot for another hour. You're like, man, I don't know how this dude can do that. I'm out of here. Like, we just died in here. But that was his dedication. And even when you got older, it was less time, but it was more, it was harder, so we did a 50 minutes to an hour, but it wasn't no breaks in between, so we just went harder and harder. But talk about like your longevity, your willingness to adapt, playing 11 years. You played in the NBA 11 years, 11 different teams, 9 different teams.
Yeah. Probably.
So
depends how many you're counting. If you count G League and then, it was 11 then.
But that's adjustment every year, having to move, every year new coaches, every year new systems, every year new teammates. Every year, some of your kids that were born had to go different places,
right?
Putting houses on the market and buying new houses. Talk about that experience of being in, 9 different places in 11 years, the journey, that takes.
Yeah, it really was an awesome journey. I mean, I think, we all, when I say we, I mean, guys like me and you that, play at the highest level, there's no question we dreamed to be able to try to play a game for a living. I mean, that's the ultimate dream. And you and I have been blessed to, both have been able to do that. And I think, the 11-year journey, it was such a blessing. And mine was a little bit different because, like you said, like the longevity of it and being able to have done it for a long time, it was just interesting because as we're talking about shooting and with where we've seen shooting start, by start, I mean, like when I got drafted in 2006 to where it is now, shooting is it's considered something so different and more valuable and useful and analytically proven to be a good thing than it was in 2006. And so for me, like the longevity of my career is interesting because like basically every year that I was in the league was continuing to trend more and more towards shooting. So like there was the thing, I just think if like to our point, if I played now, if I could have played 20 years and still be playing right now, it's like, how valuable would a skill set be of a 6'10", 47% 3-point shooter be? It's like, that is the ultimate piece right now. We use Sam Hauser as an example. I think he's an absolutely very similar player, to who I was. And so to see the volume he gets up, to see that I think he's in his 3rd year right now, to see the way he's been pushed forward in a beautiful, good way versus for me, I played for Jeff Van Gundy my first year. Who, he doesn't love playing rookies, fine, but he's a defensive coach.
Correct.
Not in love with the 3-point shot, more of an old school game. I was fortunate to then play for Rick Adelman in my second season. He was more of a shooting coach and he liked the shooters and that kind of thing. But I say all that to just say, like, I played for, so many great coaches, Mike D'Antoni, Mike Woodson, Coach Popovich, Coach Carlisle, Billy Donovan, Jason Kidd. So all these different guys throughout my career. But as the time went on, it was like more and more of we need you to do what you do. We want you on the court more, we want you to shoot more. So I was so blessed and thankful that I was one of those guys that was doing something that my skill set was, we like it, we want more of it, we want you out there more. So I was blessed in that fact. And the joke of it is, and if I was still playing today, it would literally still be trending that way with teams. The Boston Celtics just made 25 out of 53s, 2 games ago. I mean, that's where it's at. 25 is a huge number and 50 is a huge number. And so it was a beautiful thing, I think, to be wanted. I think when I look at playing for 11 years on 9 different teams, you either nobody, the joke is either nobody wants you or everybody wants you. And I tend to think it was more of the everybody wants you, and because of the skill set that I had. And, just being able to be under that many different systems and to see all those different approaches and kind of the impact that it has on a guy like me, who I had a skill set. And if you were a coach who you wanted me to be a guy who did what I did best and you focused on what I did well, I was a guy that could really help your team. I was a guy that could score points for you. I could stretch the floor. I could be a huge distraction on offense. If you got stars, I could be a guy that made defenses pay if they were disrespectful. I was a guy that I wasn't the best defensive player, And so there's no question. It was like if you saw the things I couldn't do, then at times earlier in my career, I would sit more. And I think like that part of the journey was very like, I learned a lot about like when you focus on the things that guys do well, what it can bring out. I think about my New York years.
Yep.
When you emphasize, like Mike D'Antoni did, what each guy does well, and that's why you play. And if you play for a coach who they see the things that you don't do well, because each guy in the league has stuff they do well and stuff they don't do well. And if you focus on the stuff that they do well, it's amazing what you can bring out of guys. And there's certain other coaches that say, like, you do a great job at this, but you don't do. And so we just can't have you out there too much, and you focus on the negative.
Yeah.
So it's shaped, I think, the way I coach kids, the way that I view kids now. And, you know, some of the stuff you talked about early on with, you know, Nolan Minnesali too, you know, like seeing what he can do, seeing what he'll continue to be able to do.
Correct.
I think is so impactful. And so, you know, the 11-year journey for me has just been to be around that many teammates with that many coaches at a time when the league was and still is, you know, evolving. Just I've been able to take away so many little things from the experiences that were negative with coaches that I didn't love playing for, as well as coaches who I loved playing for, like the Mike D'Antonis and the Coach Popoviches. There's stuff that I use with my 7th grade CBA team now, as far as like defensive concepts that Coach Popovich implemented. And so it's just, I'm so thankful to have had those interactions, so many different cities, so many different teammates, so many different philosophies, because it makes you realize in the game of basketball, there's not just one way to do anything.
Right.
There's not one way to break the zone defense. There's not one style of sideline out of bound play. There's not one style of leadership. Even from an accountability standpoint, I saw coaches that were super lax on accountability and others that were super strict. And I'm telling you now, it doesn't always equate to like that team was a winner, that team is a loser. It's some very interesting stuff with that, where, you know, I just think that the NBA is an amazing place because there's no one there at that level that's playing that just kind of squeaked through the cracks. That wasn't really worthy of being there. And I think now in the NBA, more than ever, that's one of the coolest parts that I see, is that there's no one that's playing at the NBA level that you go like, he's just tall, or he just had no. Each one of these guys has overcome and beat out thousands and thousands of guys to be where they're at. And so I think it's just cool to watch who makes it through and how, from a coaching perspective and from a player perspective. But, you know, basketball is just this endlessly awesome world. We can always be learning. It's always evolving. And it's just, I'm grateful to, like you said, have had the journey from, you know, being a youngster with my pops growing up, you know, to getting our heads beat in at Marquette, to playing with guys like legends like Dwayne Wade, to an 11-year NBA journey, and now be doing, you know, camps and clinics and shooting competitions, you know, with CBA. And so I don't expect it to end anytime soon.
Right. We were talking a lot about shooting, and earlier I was talking with Max before you got here that there's some people that are eliminating the 5 position and stuff because of the shooting, right? You got I don't think Al Horford would be a big man if he wasn't knocking down the threes, or Brook if he wasn't knocking down the threes. What is the role of a 5 now in the NBA if you can't shoot the 3? You know, you look at Andre Drummond, he's not the player he was before people were shooting, you know.
Right. Well, all 3 of those guys that you mentioned are shooters now.
Exactly.
Like Brook Lopez, he didn't take a 3, you know, his first 7 years in the league. Now look where he is.
Even make one for, I think, his first 6, and he only made 3 in his first 8.
Right, and he was really good.
Made all-star teams. I mean, it wasn't. Look at Andre Drummond. I mean, now he's shooting 3s for the Bulls.
That's wild.
I mean, it's like you when he first came in, you would never think
he was the big
He'd get you 20 rebounds.
The big's big.
Right. Yeah. Al Horford coming out of Florida, you know, playing for the Atlanta Hawks. He wasn't doing any of the stuff that he's corner spacing now for corner 3s, you know, and that's what this game is just so involved that 5 positions got to be able to do a lot, or you got to be like the Joker who still can shoot, or Bam and those guys who have the ball in their hand, so that, you know, and then I think Golden State revolutionized the 4-5 spot by playing in that pinch post, by throwing the ball, you know, because they don't play off the post. They a little bit like
they throw it to the post to initiate
action. That wasn't normal back then. Obviously, the Bulls did a little bit of that with the triangle, throwing it to Cartwright and Luke Longley and working off of that with the triangle. But Steve Kerr brought that right back with throwing it to the 4s and 5s and making them decision makers.
Even Marquette, like Ozo,
Ozo.
They play with the pocket and they run it through him.
Yep, and that's what Miami does with Bam at the top. That's what Joker does. I mean, Joker really is the point guard of that group. I mean, they throw it to him and he makes all the decisions. Yep. So I think that 5 position is just so, different than what we saw Moses Malone and Kareem and, know, these type of guys. It's just, it has faded the game.
Do we
think a little bit? Even Shaq.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in like his last stretch.
Yeah.
When he bounced the Celtics, like
you can't play him.
He couldn't play him anymore. Do we think this is overall, I shouldn't say bad, but making it, this is how you have to play basketball and then eliminating different varieties and different schemes, especially at the NBA?
Yeah.
I think the 2-point shot is a lost art.
Yeah.
The and there's just DeRozan's game is a lost art.
Yeah.
If you turn on an NBA game, you're getting probably 85 threes between the two teams, and whoever makes more will win the game probably. And maybe the free throw line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that bad? Do you think it's going to go back? I would love to hear your take on it.
No, and just right off what you're saying, I think, to me, the really interesting part about this conversation, about your point about 80, we're going to see 85 threes is, I mean, first of all, I think what we're talking about with the big fellas is that, to me, that's just like the 3-point evolution of the game, where it went from about 13 years ago. This is real. There was not a team in the NBA making 10 3-pointers. There was no one 13 years ago making 10 as a team. Now, there's no team in the NBA making fewer than 10 threes per game. Mm-hmm. So it's literally just, it's flipped. The lowest shooting volume 3-point shooting teams are now making more than the highest 3-point shooting teams were just like about a decade ago. And so like the evolution, to me, it's by evolution, I mean, it's just such a healthy thing for the league to evolve in a way where you're like, they've found a way to score more. They've found a way because you don't evolve in that direction if teams aren't having success. And so, Joe, to your point with the Golden State Warriors being evolutionary, like there were teams shooting threes before Golden State.
Right.
I was on a Knicks team that was shooting it, to be honest, at the highest volume then. That was like 10, 11, 12 made threes per game with J.R. Smith and Jeremy Lin and those guys. But to see, I think, that the Golden State Warriors showed that you're not settling when you shoot a three. Mm-hmm. You can actually win a championship. Because you remember the conversation.
Analytics was saying you couldn't win if you take that.
You're settling.
You settling. You can't
throw it to the big fella.
Right.
You can't be shooting these bad shots out here. That's I mean, that was not that long ago. That was absolutely what the narrative was. And I mean, like the most common mind would go, yeah, you're settling. We can get a better shot than that. Mm-hmm. But what does better mean, right? It's like if you're trying to win games and like you're saying you're going to get 85, 90 field goal attempts up, you start to work backwards with math and analytics. And the truth is, like, those are really good shots. Golden State proved that, and they showed it to everybody. You can win at the highest level.
And I think it changed the game from the youth game. I think it changed the girls' game. I think it changed the guys' game of how they played the game. Because it kind of hurts sometimes because you get a lot of kids that forget the process, like Steve was talking about, of making 200, 300 mid-range and, inside your avenue of where you should be, focusing on your form and stuff like that. But it helped revolutionize it because kids can dream and say, I can do that.
Well, what do you see when you come into a gym before practice? What are they doing?
Oh, they chucking threes.
Chucking threes.
That's
all they're doing is chucking threes.
Right?
It's more fun, like you were saying.
They can drill.
Yeah, when you grew up, it's just more fun. It's more talked about, now. And it's changed the whole game. So kids making, let's say high school kids, they're making 90 to 100 threes now. My high school senior year, I made 78, 79. And that was like
you were different. High volume.
Right. Right. Like people were like,
easy, Joe, easy.
That's different. Like you made damn near 83s in high school. Now kids are doing that, they're shooting 83s by about time middle of the season is is up.
What do you think about moving the 3-point line back a little bit for high school? Kids are knocking them down at college. Why not move the line?
Yeah, and we talk about it. Me and Max talk about it, how we want our spacing. And when we talk about like Steve's team and U13, U14, we want it at the NBA to college line as opposed to toes on that high school line.
Even at the state tournament, they were, they saw the college.
If there's more than one line on a court, they're taking the.
They're going to take the
doesn't
deep.
matter where
100%.
If the half court line's the only line, they're shooting from that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true.
But go back. Can you imagine Pistol Pete and those guys having a 3-point line? Jerry West, them dudes was shooting deep.
Those were bad shots.
Terrible shots at that.
Terrible.
I'm saying analytically, that's worth the same as a shot. That is
Wilt. What did you do? Throw it to Wilt.
Yeah,
down there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's an argument.
I want to hear your take on. I heard this. I think JJ Redick said it. With the rule changes, with you can't touch anyone and how everyone can shoot now.
Mm-hmm.
With the NBA, do you think, like in Europe, that they should allow get rid of the 3 seconds and illegal defense with how evolved the game is now? Should we go back to how everyone else is taught the game before you get to the NBA, as opposed to having different rules for the NBA?
Yeah, I think, the way that the NBA has done it obviously has been the leader in sports, where it went from, and those decisions are based on as much entertainment, I think, as they are for the good of basketball. And I think the players, they pretty much kind of guide the way that these, it's like when guys are throwing elbows in each other's faces and everyone's breaking their nose. Well, fellas, we're going to probably change the rules to the ejections are going to be bigger. The fines are going to be bigger. If, James Harden creates this sweeping rule where we're going to change the rule. And so I think, to those kind of conversations.
I kind of started with Sam Cassell, though, right?
Yeah.
Pump fake, dive into him. D-Wade figure that move out, too.
Because, players at the NBA level, it's incredible how they can adapt to either what rules aren't out there and take advantage, or when the rules are, how quickly they can just change. Because I was a part of every preseason meeting for 11 years where they come in and the referees meet with every single team and they talk about points of emphasis. And it's amazing, from stuff like, we're not going to allow guys to egregiously, air punch or flail at the referees. We're going to give them technicals. Guys were doing air punches and we were mad about calls after a bad call over and over and over for years. And there was no technical fouls. There was no whatever.
Yep.
All of a sudden, one summer they decided that for entertainment's sake, fans don't like watching guys be egregious and demonstrative with their flailing and acting like that's a bad call. They say, like, knock it off, grow up. They didn't like the image. They told the guys, we're going to give you tees. Every time a guy flailed, did an air punch, technical foul. Within a month, no one air punched again.
Right. Because they called everything.
They called it all. And the guys adjust. And I think it's the same. It's like guys see what a Euro step is. Like, hold on. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody can do a Euro step. They had the sweep through rule like we were talking about with James Harden. It was like before it was called a sideline out, every guy started to sweep through. They changed the rule.
Yep.
It's not as valuable anymore. It's sideline out. It's not shooting foul.
Yep.
Guys have stopped doing the sweep because it's not as valuable anymore.
Right.
So it's amazing just to see like the way the league adapts and changes the rules, and the way the players not only are the reason for the adaptation, but also they have the ability to, whatever the rules are, they can overcome.
And I think James Harden had done a great job of, I don't give him a lot of credit. It's not one of my favorite players, but he's done a great job of like figuring out what to get away with. Like, he was one of those guys who he would pay refs to come in his workouts to figure out, can I do this gather step? Like, he's the reason we got the gather to the 1-2 instead of like high school. You just got 1-2, college 1-2, like NBA, they got the gather step into a step back. Like, he realized like, okay, I can get away with a little bit more. And he kind of, made this new era of how they kind of play now.
So we were talking on a couple earlier podcasts about the college game, how players are not ready coming into the NBA. You guys were talking earlier about how tough it was, and you couldn't do that stuff now, right? How many kids would be in the portal if they ran a practice like you guys?
Everyone.
You know, and we talk about the girls' game. We talk about the girls' game being better because they spend 4 years in college and they're not going school to school. How do you see the college players being ready, you know, watching your NBA games, rookies, and you know?
You know, I do think it's hard to prepare from college to the NBA, and for a lot of the reasons we're saying, there's this whole space in the NBA that's so elevated as far as the guy's ability to do the sweep throughs and to shoot the ball from 45 feet away where that wasn't allowed. And, you know, the isolation pick and roll and the defensive coverages, it's just the space on the floor. And a lot of the rules, some of the stuff you were just kind of talking about, the defensive 3 seconds and all those kinds of things where I just think to be prepared for all that is really tough while you're trying to be successful at the college game. And so I do think like you have to be as good as you can be in college. And a lot of the colleges are doing more NBA type schemes and that kind of thing. But the rules in the NBA, as far as like the freedom of movement offensively and what you can do, that's a good defensive play versus what's a foul. I think, you know, in college to the NBA, there's intricacies and differences to it. And so I just think you have to remember when you watch an NBA game that it is designed for entertainment's sake. It also is designed, when I say entertainment's sake, to be pleasing to the most people, right? For the advertisers to have the greatest show, to create the highest scoring, but to also create the most consistency, also create the most exciting game with dunks and with threes, and also to play towards like what fits the players' skill sets in today's game. There's all of this going into it. I mean, you hear the conversations between Adam Silver and some of the competition committee talking a lot about, you know, scoring is down. And then like the next, we're talking about right now, believe it or not, is down. But you start to look at like some of the games that have happened recently, it's 80-point halves and it's 150-point games.
Bucks just, what was it, 140 to
exactly
1 whatever.
So I do think like my point is the rules in the NBA are designed so specifically to accomplish so many things that it's hard when I hear people say like no one guards anymore or like it's just not what it used to be. I think like, yes, that might be true in some cases. For instance, if you say like guys just don't guard anymore. Now, according to a lot of the rules that have been implemented, guys aren't allowed to guard the way they used to guard. They'll foul out of the game. It's just not the way the game is played. And so I think it's correct assessment. They're not guarding the same. But if Scottie Pippen was out there guarding the way Scottie Pippen used to guard, he would foul out and be an awful defender. You fouled out the last 4 games in 10 minutes each. And so I say that just to say, it's not that there's a lack of defense being played. It's the way the rules are assigned, there's going to be higher scoring. There's going to be greater spacing. The guys' skill sets have developed around those rules to be able, like we said, to have Andre Drummond shooting 3-point shots. And so I just think that the game itself, it is harder to get stops. The court is way bigger now. When I was playing, it happened. The Golden State Warriors started making threes. The Golden State Warriors started winning championships. And the schemes became, no matter where Steph Curry gets screened, the coverage is to go over the screen. And you were like, now hold on. If somebody comes out, and Dre sets a screen at half court, you don't want me to go under that? And the answer was no. We want you to go over everything on Steph. Half court, 3/4 court, at the 3-point line, doesn't matter. Because if you can get on his hip and chase him, at least he can't get a comfortable shot. And you were like, but from where? And you were like, well, he's shooting it from 40 feet away. Whereas it used to be, obviously, if you're at the 3-point line or below, you go over, and anything above that, you go under. We don't care if they shoot it from so deep. And so I say that to say the court is so big now, meaning it's big if you're going over on a screen at half court. So if you're going over as a decision defensively, that means that you're allowing Steph Curry to have a running head start to the paint, which means someone else has to, by design, come and stop him. And when he does, someone else is going to be open. And the court is no longer 3-point line and down. It's from half court and down. And so it's just a different game. And so it's hard to go back to your initial question about college going to the NBA. It's hard to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to play the college game,
Yeah.
and then you got to obviously have certain skill sets or the ability to adapt quickly once you get to the NBA level, which a lot of guys do.
I think your point about it being entertainment, you see all other sports. The NFL's changing the rules, the kickoffs. Major League, now the
Baseball
pitcher
with
has a
pitch clock.
pitch clock. Every sport has to
California
change
rules.
some rules
Yep.
for the entertainment. They want to see more points in the NFL. Now they're going to be moving the kickoff line, and
Oh, yeah.
so it's not just the NBA, it's every
Are they,
sport.
I guess for the NBA PA, are they like up front? The commissioners, the front offices, are they like, hey, this is entertainment, where this is a business? Are they upfront with players, or that's just known? Like when they make
Very,
the rules,
very upfront.
very upfront.
But I would say this: it's not all the rules are not being put in place, for
Correct,
entertainment.
correct.
But to your point, I think the NBA is a unique place because it is a brotherhood in that it is an industry that the players are 50% of the pot and the owners are 50% of the pot.
Mhm.
So everybody has the same interest in the health of the game, and by the health of the game, I think that has to do with player safety all the way to
Media rights
profitability.
deal.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's looked at from a very healthy standpoint of there's no player or owner or anybody who wants the game to be played in any kind of way that is looked at by fans negatively. If that means like someone came in and said they wanted to, in the competition committee, wanted to implement, a further line and more 3-point shooting. I think if players or coaches or fans in general felt like that was going to be a bad thing for the league as far as people enjoying watching it or players playing it,
Mhm.
they have no interest in making that rule change. So I think it comes from a very healthy standpoint, but with the understanding that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Mhm.
that there's no question keeping the fans happy. It has a huge piece to do with it.
Yeah.
But I tend to think continuing to find what the authentic version of the game is the goal, because that's what fans want to watch. They don't
Yeah.
want to just watch 3-point shooting. They don't want to just watch post players. And to your point earlier,
Yeah.
Max, when you were saying they're going to see 85 threes, I think when I talk about the authenticity of the game, I think it's really fun to me, at least as a basketball nerd shooter guy, to go, yeah, we're going to see 85 threes, but it's not about how many we're going to see. To me, it's about we're going to see how those 85 attempts are gotten.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because if it's from dribbling down the court and jacking,
Yeah.
Right.
you're I don't want to watch that. But if it's because there you got post players who are still bigs and are really skilled and they're a threat, so the defense has to respect them.
Yeah.
So everybody has to guard their man one-on-one on the perimeter.
Mhm.
Then to me, you go, now this is fun to watch. It's almost like an investment guy. Investment guys are not always about I love money.
Mhm.
They're about finding out how money is created.
Yeah.
And I find that I'm that version of a basketball guy.
Right.
Yeah, I love 3-point shooting,
Yeah.
but I love figuring out and seeing what are the most successful ways to create
Yeah.
made 3-pointers.
Yeah,
Instead
I'm
of coming down.
that's-
I have a
how I
follow-up
am.
question on this.
Yeah.
NBA, everyone switches 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Why do all the teams just lazy switch at the top of the key and then you just put on Brooke Lopez on shake it? Why do we do that?
Yeah.
Just because why do you have to switch that? Because I feel like you're in a switching coverage, but do you have to do it every time? Because that's what I think. I watch the NBA now more than college. The shot making is ridiculous. I like the schemes. It's different. I like watching the Thunder and just the individual performances.
Yep.
But sometimes it's spread ball, screen, switch, go, especially late. Why does every team still
can
switch?
I let me answer this one?
Okay.
Because I'm like Steve, just a super basketball nerd, and that was
Yeah.
one of my things.
Do you have to?
You have to. And I'm gonna tell you why. Miami Heat won back to back, and they had all these great athletes, and they double teamed and trapped and hedged and recovered everything. San Antonio Spurs, they beat them. Then they came back and damn near got swept. What they tried to do was the same thing, and the Spurs just moved the ball, and they made them look foolish for playing trap defense and switch defense by moving the ball at a high clip and surrounding Tim Duncan with all shooters
Yeah.
and decision makers. So when Golden State and those guys got 5, that death lineup changed everything. So that death lineup with Draymond and Iggy at the 4 and the 5.
And this is why they were called the death lineup.
Yes.
Because as you're trying to defensively figure out what is
to
the
do.
coverage,
Right.
should we switch?
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can switch, but
Yeah.
Steph is going to be ISO on the big.
Correct.
You cannot switch and double, and then you have to rotate on the back, and then
Yes.
someone for Golden State.
You have to double. In my head, it's drop and just send them in the middle, and that's
Yeah,
like
but
the
that's-
analytics way in my head.
Yeah, but that's the problem. This is why Draymond Green, Bam, and those guys have become very successful. Because if you switch or double team them, they put them right in the middle.
And then they just play.
They just play 4-on-3, and they're so smart playing 4-on-3 that Bam. And then secondly, we went into this drop coverage, right? That the Bucks do a lot.
Yep.
These guys, these basketball dudes that shoot threes, are shooting at a high clip off the dribble now
Yeah.
that we
Yes.
couldn't do.
Which is
This is
that's
not normal.
More recent than 3-point shooting.
Yes.
That's like the next.
Yes.
Is the
So
off
if you
the
fight
dribble.
over the
Yeah.
top, and now these dudes like Duncan Robinson and them,
Fouls,
they got the
hit.
push dribble out where you all the way in the paint and you trying to fight. They just flying and shooting a three. It makes it hard coverage,
Yeah.
like to kind of guard it. So I was the same way. I'm like,
in my head,
why?
I'd rather have a late like rear view contest than my big guy just looking like a fool. That's probably why you just take him out
Yeah, yeah,
eventually.
yeah.
But that's like the biggest thing with the NBA that I am always back and forth. It's just
Yeah.
switching this late. They don't even
Yep,
hit
yep.
switch. There's no
Switch,
contact.
switch.
There's no nothing.
And then they got to start. They look at the ball so much in the NBA where
They zone
that's
up on the
they
weak
zone
side,
up
yeah.
on the weak side.
Yeah.
So they trying to take away the corner threes
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting.
It's an interesting.
Yeah, I think
You know,
Joe's
concept.
answer to me is exactly right. And I don't think it's always black or white.
right.
You have to switch, or you shouldn't be, right? I think depending on who you're playing,
Mhm.
like if there are weaknesses in the team that you're going against, meaning if there is a guy on the court that you're going against who is a non-shooter, then you can leave him alone.
Mhm.
To our point in a lot of this conversation, a lot of lineups right now, there are no weak spots. There's guys that
Yeah.
really can shoot the ball. But when there aren't, I think it allows you to be much more creative defensively, because then you can choose to give something up, meaning you're going to put two guys in a blitz coverage, in a trap coverage on a pick and roll action on the ball to take away a certain shooting threat, knowing full well we're leaving someone on that team wide open in the corner because we're choosing to, because they're not a good shooter.
Yeah.
So if you're going against a team that has that, you can be way more creative.
Yeah.
In the NBA, with how skilled guys are and how smart
And
the
with the
coaches
3
are.
seconds too, and those guys are becoming, man. Because I'm like you guys, I'm watching the game and they leave guys open. Now those guys are
They're
setting
wide
flare.
open though.
They
Like,
setting flare screens.
Yeah,
and they
dribble
catch
hand.
it, dribble handoff right
Yeah.
back to the guy who's a great shooter.
Yeah.
They becoming so much smarter.
Yeah.
The game has evolved. Like when we played, you either got taken out the court or you better go like Nolan did, 1 for 11. Like you better either shoot it
Mhm.
or make a decision.
Yeah.
Now these guys are like making decisions. Like Draymond would pass up a wide open layup because it's a 3-second lane and legal defense. So he's waiting for somebody to come over. As soon as you show a little bit like you're coming at him, boom, he's off of it. Like he's turning down 5 to 7 shots a game just so he can get the blitz coverage and get it right in the middle and make decisions.
Yeah.
The game is just so evolved. These players, like Steve was saying, are so smart that you can't scheme against them. It starts with Pop. Like Pop, he's weird like that. Like he was waiting for the Heat to come back with that same coverage like that he had, because the Heat was so successful at blitzing and trap. You had Bosh and all these bigs that can hedge and recover, and you had D Wade and LeBron on the back line. If you did tag the roller and they did throw it into them, they come in to block everything from the backside. So the coverages, it looks so lazy, but it's really the way these guys are evolved. You have to do this or it looks really bad.
And you said some too, that it looks lazy. And I think to me, that's a big part of it, because I mean, I think everybody really does know at this point, even though you might not realize it, like almost everything that's being done on the court, who's playing, what shots are being taken, and what coverages are being made are based on analytics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, and so there might be like outlier performances or stretches in the game where things look a kind of way where you're like, they just made 3 threes in a row, or that guy's got 15 points in the quarter. which would be like an outlier performance based on what we thought we were going to get from our defensive analytics. Because teams have a full staff of analytics guys that are saying stuff to the point of, at the end of a game, we should foul in this situation because the percentage of possessions that teams score on sideline out of bounds plays is only 45%. Yeah. And if we allow them to run their half-court set, they score at 52%. So they simply foul at the end of the game, make them take the sideline out of bounds because teams are less successful. So sometimes it comes down to, and I think a lot of times it comes down to, the coverages a lot of times, like you're saying, seeing a Brook Lopez switch onto a Rozier type guard. You go like, are we really putting a speedy downhill guard against a 7-foot guy who is not as mobile? It looks crazy, but I think the analysts are possibly, and in many cases it is the case, saying it looks crazy. He's going to get scored on sometimes. But if Terry Rozier is taking that shot and Brook is forcing him into either a pull-up three that for him is a lower percentage shot, or he's essentially going at Brook and Brook is going to be able to alter his shot, then we want that versus the threat of whoever, this guy, that guy, or this guy getting a shot. And it's almost like that looks bad, but we prefer it so much versus what else could happen. And so I do think, like, to simplify it all the way down, I would say, to answer your question, like, do all NBA teams need to do that? I think the answer will always be based on the analytics of some basketball geek stuff. Like, if you make 90% of your free throws and you get fouled 10 times, that means you're going to the line 10 times, you're shooting 20 shots, and you're going to be making 18 out of 20 free throws. So we know that the calculation on that is 1.8 points per time you get fouled. Which is similar to if you shoot 3-point shots and you get 10 3-point shots, if you make 6 of them, you know that you have 12 points.
Right.
You have 18 points, which is also 1.8 points per shot. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's the same thing defensively. Like, we know if we play this defensive coverage over a long period of time, this team is only going to get 1.0 points per shot. Versus if we don't, we're seeing that we're giving up 1.2 points per shot, which it starts to get in the weeds. I get it. That stuff is
all good stuff. Because 1.0, if you were at a 1 point clip off, 1 point per shot or per possession offensively, you were like elite. And now that's probably the average or below average in college and
it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I mean, it really comes down to that, and I think, like, that's sometimes the math that people.
And I get not to interrupt.
No.
But I understand. I just feel like the crunch time too, where they do it so often too, and I get the numbers. Like, do we have to all the time? I get mixing up here and there. Totally.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's definitely numbers that back it up.
And to your point, late game, and situational is there's still time for analytics, but that is the time.
That's like the feel for
that is the feel
presence,
because you just know, like,
this is not good
for game. Do we want a complete mismatch? And so I think you're right, 100% on that. But I think the analytics and the numbers side on that stuff, it gets people start to blank and they go, I can't let that. But that is what a lot of what we're seeing. If you really want the answer to why we're seeing what we're seeing, it comes down to like 1.0 versus 1.2, 1.2 versus 1.8. And that's what 3-point shooting is versus 2-point shooting. That's what free throw shooting is versus mid-range jumpers. That's what layups are versus 7. So it's like, that is why we're seeing guys shoot certain shots, defense is guarded certain ways, and break the numbers down over the volume of a game or a season. You go like, all right,
makes sense.
I'm seeing that.
We got into high school, college, into the NBA. We're going to come full circle here, kind of start wrapping up. Like, you're coaching your sons, you're in CBA, part of CBA. Talk a little bit about coaching your sons' expectations. We had a couple podcasts ago where parents are out of control, and sometimes the parent coaches are the worst, right? And I've mentioned it a couple times because I've watched you coach. And when I watch Mac out there, he's just another player. You treat him just like any other player, and you're an former NBA player.
Right.
Talk a little bit about being a parent coach, playing at the highest level, and kind of coming full circle. I'm great. I think more than anything, I'm really grateful for the perspective that my career has given me on the sport of basketball, because I do think, like, guys like Joe, who played over a decade professional, and myself, who played over a decade, you just gain a different perspective on why you got to that point, how you got to that point. And also, I think
being around so many different systems and personalities and leadership, you just realize, I think, like there's so many different ways that things can be done. And so I would say, to your point about coaching my son, the one thing at this age that I'm just so passionate about, that Joe does such a good job with his program of, is creating and having that Keys to the Brown Deer High School gym environment. And the creating the atmosphere, more than like, we're going to be the greatest skill. We're going to have you shooting making half court shots. We're going to have you being the greatest, the skill stuff matters. It 100% matters. But the environment in which you do the skill stuff is way more important, because you're creating the love of basketball. And if you create a love of basketball, you get guys who want to make 300 shots every single day after school, and guys that want to shoot me and Joe after a really hard practice. So I think creating that love of the game and the environment to want to do it all the time puts you at such an elevated advantage, because you're going to be spending more time, and because you have a passion, and it's not work, and it's not something you can't wait to be done with. So to me, at this age, that's what I want to create. So when I coach my son, and to your point, is, just another kid out there? Absolutely. But because I don't have, he's D1 and he's going to the NBA expectation. I want to build the fire and the love for him, which is by way of his teammates as well, putting him around good kids, good families, playing the right way, having fun, winning every game. I doubt it, but we're going to have a really good time, and they're going to love basketball. And because of it, I think they're going to work on their own. They're going to have a passion for the sport, and they're going to want to just continue to love, to play. And so forget what your other follow-up question was on that.
Just coming full circle, like, what's your future? What do you think, sticking with the Bucks, or as your son gets older, you see yourself getting involved? Like we hear Joel, I'm gonna have to take the boys, someday or whatever. Do you see that in your future at all? Or
I just, full circle for me. Like, I don't know what's next. I feel like the basketball cycle, and Joe and I have talked about this, is it's like every 5 years seems to be like this window in time, where you're like, you're in high school, call it 5 years. You're like, oh, wow, now I'm in college for 4 or 5 years. Like, oh, this is amazing. Then it's like you do something else. For us, it was playing basketball for the first 5 years, where we're trying to prove ourselves and make it. And it was unbelievable. All of a sudden you did. Then the next 5 years was like, man, we made it. We're having a really good time. And now it's retirement, right? And to your point, it's coaching the kids, and it's, doing the Bucks broadcast, which I've been just so grateful to be able to do. I think being around a team like the Bucks at a time that this franchise is doing what they're doing, it's a beautiful thing, I think, for me to be a part of it, but equally for all the kids that live in this Wisconsin community, to have a team like that and guys like that to cheer for. So I'm so grateful for that. I would say as much from like a career standpoint as I am to be able to bring my family along and have them a part of it like everybody else's family is. I think it's just, again, to that same point about like having positive influences and being able to be around positive basketball environments. I think the Bucks is just another version of that.
How do you prepare for, like, there's a big game tonight? You're probably going to be how do you prepare for like tonight, stat wise? You're like looking at what everybody's been shooting.
Well, I can tell you on my phone. So we go back and forth. The night before, basically the routine is like I do the pre and post, like you're saying, pre and post game show other games. I do pre and post and the in game color, and the prep for the in game color is I wouldn't be here today doing this if I was doing that, because just you dive in, you're going through full rosters, looking at trends, looking at every player, what everyone's doing. Really around the whole league. You want to be able to talk everything and encompass everything. And so tonight I'm just doing pre and post, but we go back and forth on emails and sharing ideas as far as, what was the great stuff that happened last game. Obviously it's like Bobby Portis going off and having 25 points in the first half, and, having Chris Middleton back and seeing what Dame is doing with Giannis out and that kind of stuff. And so, we just go through and we share a bunch of ideas, and then we decide what clip packages we want to run, and of what. We kind of go back and look at the game and pull clips and stuff like that. And then, just different stuff on the opponent as well. Obviously seeing what Boston is doing, how they're sitting up so high at number one, but, some of the connection stuff too, like the Sam Hauser and the stuff that he's doing. I'm not sure if he'll play or not, but coming off a 30-point, 10-made 3 game and stuff like that. So just kind of how it relates to where we currently sit in the season and that kind of thing, and putting packages together. And so, then tonight we'll our producers will make all the magic happen, and we'll get to talk all about it. So
Yeah, big game. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, it'll be good to see.
Yeah.
See where we're at as far as Milwaukee. To finish, Joel, why don't you just talk a little bit about your relationship and what it means to you?
Oh,
Having
yeah.
to be part of CBA. And
Yeah, I mean, we've been knowing each other over 22, almost 25 years now. I mean,
Too long.
it's going fast. So just to see how, like he talked about earlier, the discipline and structure that he has had his whole life from when he was younger to now, it just rubs off on anybody that he meets. And I was no different just coming in and meeting him. We're the same class, but I'm younger. So I came in at 17. So just to see somebody with that discipline and dedication, having 2 sets of parents, just seeing the environment that he had. I think I was at one of his games where they either retired his number or something that they did at the old Brown Deer. So just going, just to know him off the court, was the fun part of getting to know him on the court. So spending 4 years and the memories of the Final Four and leaving the program our senior year the way we found it, getting back to the tournament. But also just every year that we came back from all of our places, right? We always met in the gym.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like a barbecue or, of anything. It was, I'll see you at the gym when you get back. So that's how we talk about the 5 years, where people are going to be in 5 years. I can tell you where 2 of us is going to be. We're going to be in the gym. I don't know what gym. I don't know where, but you're going to always find us in the gym because we're creatures of habit. And I learned that from him, just always being around. And now it's rubbing off on our kids, our boys. There's time that I can remember vividly last summer that our 2 boys are just in the gym, just playing, and we're just sitting in the bleachers watching them go one-on-one. Things that we did all the time. There's times me and Steve will play after practice or before practice where I still got elbow, right here, and he's got scratches all over him.
Sure do. Bunch of scars. He used to cut his nails.
Yeah. And we used to play all the time. And we have senior media day, and people would never know we were just in a full-out battle for hours playing one-on-one. And then we'd have to do interviews, and we're laughing and joking, but no one knows how much time we put in to make each other better people, better players. So just to see the full circle of having camps together, have clinics, both of our kids are getting to that age where it's starting to get more important, the traveling more, being on road trips. So it's like full circle moments for us as athletes that's been a part of something that hard, from a great university like Marquette and having a great coach like Tom Crean. That whole team of that Final Four is very successful. We're all successful in something, even though we ragged about how hard it is. We wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have that foundation. So 20 years later of still having that, camaraderie with some of these guys that we're doing interviews with now and podcasts, it just makes it seem like this is our family forever. And in some type of capacity, we're going to always be connected. And this is the cool part of the connection. Because once you go through wars and battles, it's going to translate over to the next generation of what you learned, what we learned from, for me, international ball, what he learned NBA ball, this learning from different people, different coaches. Now we have this encyclopedia of how to make someone better. And that's the cool part of having long friendships and camaraderie.
Well, this was our longest podcast we've done. So.
Oh, I knew that was.
Joe said that was.
I knew that was going to be the case.
No, I can't see in very much long-winded nature. I gotta follow up what Joe said too, because I think what he said is real, and I want to just echo it. I think like you said, having gone through, what Joe and I did together at Marquette. To be honest, like I don't really love talking about, and I really won't with most people about like what went on at Marquette, because like Joe said, when you go through certain phases of life or certain battles and adversity and stuff like that, which the truth is that's just what college was for us. It was proving ourselves. It was fighting together. It was overcoming together. It was very much failing together. It was having doubts together. And it was also, like you said, having, decade-long careers afterwards. I think I don't like to even talk about those years that much with people that I didn't go through with, because there's no real need to try to explain.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, either they can't relate or they just think you're kind of embellishing or saying
Yeah.
it was a certain way. And so I think, to Joe's point, I just really do appreciate, the guys that I went through those battles with, because they all have such a big piece in the success that Joe had. We all have a piece in that. The success that I've had and will continue to have around the game of basketball, all those guys went through that with, they have a piece of it. And so I think you're just so grateful for, like Joe said, when we were battling, when no one was watching, we were essentially fist fighting. It wasn't difficult to afterwards be all good,
Right.
and be doing the interviews and be joking and having a good time. Because the truth is, we both understood, like, we were both doing it for the right reasons, to make each other better, and to, to be hopefully one day sitting here like we are now. And so it is very cool. And I think it's just beautiful, I think, to see more than anything what Joe is doing with his program as he grows it, how he's growing it, his philosophy, why he's doing it. Because I think all that matters way more than like what does the skill workout look like? What does the weightlifting look like? To me, it comes more down to what is the environment? Why is it being done? For what impact? What greater purpose? And I think it's similar to having a dream. It's like, what does it look like? I don't know to get there. But boy, I'll tell you, if you can achieve it, it's a beautiful thing. I think that's what CBA, is. It's this beautiful basketball community that's, everybody's in it together. Everybody doesn't always know each other, and it's grown fast and that kind of thing. But with the same foundation, I think it's having a really positive impact and it will for a long time, and a great environment for a lot of families and a lot of kids. And, it takes a unique figure, and trust me, it's more Carolyn than it is Joe.
Yeah.
But Joe,
for sure.
But Joe is
100%.
no, but there's no question. It's just a beautiful thing to see coming from a family where my pops was a basketball figure. I just have an appreciation for that. And I think it's a beautiful way of life, and it impacts a lot of people. And I think the game of basketball has a tendency to do that if done right.
Well, we appreciate
appreciate
you.
it.
Wait, I got one more.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kidding. We're good. So people are sick.
Well, we know he had a rough drive here, so he'll have a rough drive
I'm
back.
going to take the same route back, hour and a half around the construction.
Milwaukee traffic. So thanks a lot, Steve. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be on.